We are going to start back up. Hope everybody had a good lunch. In case you weren't here earlier, hi, I'm Sabrina Shankman, climate change reporter at the Boston Globe. Very excited to be here for this year's Sustainability Summit. We've had a lot of great conversations so far. Really looking forward to this one. So this next panel is going to be called Moving Communities Forward, Investing in Sustainability. Joining me today are three people who know this landscape very well from some different perspectives. All the way on the end, we have Julie Curdy, who serves as the Director of Clean Energy at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which is the regional planning agency that serves the 101 cities and towns in and around the greater Boston region. In this role, Julie leads a team that works with municipalities on developing and implementing clean energy and climate plans, policies, and programs. Welcome, Julie. Next to her, we have Jillian Wilson-Martin, who is the Sustainability Director for the town of Natick, where she's helped save the community money while investing in clean energy and sustainability there. Welcome, Jillian. And finally is Sean Luce, the Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Framingham. Sean oversees the city's participation in the state's Green Communities Program and leads clean energy projects across municipal facilities, including an exciting networked geothermal project that we'll talk more about. Welcome, Sean. All right. As a reminder, if you've got questions, you can use the QR code to submit them, and I will do my best to incorporate a few into our conversation. And with that, diving in. So we've heard so far today about some of the ways that changes at the federal level are complicating climate action. Julie, I'd love to throw this first question to you. When it comes to local and regional sustainability work, how are those federal changes trickling down?
Yeah, that's a big question. When I think about it, I'm thinking it's kind of like parenting. The days are long, but hopefully the years will feel short over time, so we'll see. But really, it's a little too early to tell in some cases, and the theme of the day is uncertainty. And we just have a lack of clarity about funding, programs, regulations, economic policy, and as you all know, it shifts multiple times a day. There are concerning cuts we have seen even in the last few weeks at the federal level. I wanted to call out the BRIC program, Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities, a really important program that builds resilience projects, had its funding cut last week. And we also saw cuts to all of the staff of the LIHEAT program, the Low Income Heating Assistance Program. That's a vital lifeline for people to have heating in the winter, just to name a few. So all of that is happening, but amid all of that, our work continues, and Massachusetts is in a really strong position. I'm so glad Jillian and Sean are here today to share more about their work. At the local level, at the regional level, at the state level, we're still doing important climate work in terms of both mitigation and resilience, and that work will continue irregardless of what happens federally.
So coming off that, I mean, Jillian, maybe you can talk about kind of set the table with the scope of work happening in Natick, just so people can understand, because I think you hear sustainability director, sustainability coordinator, it doesn't necessarily click to someone who isn't familiar with those terms, just what that means, but there's a lot that encompasses.
Yeah, thank you for that question, and thanks for having us here. I think that at the local level, that's where you really see the most change, and that's where we can make the most impact. And what I love about this job is that every day I really am working on something different, many different issues throughout the day. Julie spoke of the BRIC program, and in Natick we have an aging dam in our community on the Charles River that we need to repair or replace. And I've been working on repair or remove, and I've been working on removing that dam. And that's one issue. We're working on curbside composting and how we manage our waste. We're working on electrifying our buildings, making our buildings more energy efficient. All those issues really span multiple stakeholders and have different economics. And so as a sustainability manager, director, energy manager, waste coordinator, those are all titles that people in my role have in other communities. We're working to make those issues relatable in your community and to work out the kinks of how to actually solve it locally.
Yeah, so Julie and I first met when I was writing a story about that role, like what it means for a community to have a sustainability director versus to not have one, and what it seemed to kind of come out through that reporting for me was an understanding that having someone in that role actually, though you have to pay their salary, ends up saving quite a bit of money. And that's what you've seen in Natick, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sustainability managers throughout the Commonwealth, we're usually delivering at least 5 times our salaries to our community, probably more. In one especially great year, Natick was able to bring in over $3 million, and I don't, get paid anywhere close to that as a local municipal worker. But it's really a mistake in your community if you're thinking about hiring a sustainability person and you don't, because they really help unlock and tap into lots of funding that your community needs to get things done.
So, Sean, let's talk about Framingham. Some folks might be familiar with this a little bit, but Framingham is sort of a proving ground for networked geothermal. You have a very exciting pilot that's happening there. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and kind of where things stand?
Of course, yeah. Thank you. So the network geothermal project in Framingham is being led by Eversource. It's actually the result of a rate case where Eversource, under the direction of the state, is exploring this technology to expand, essentially as a decarbonization solution across the state. And so in Framingham, we have one of our neighborhoods with 36 buildings that are participating. I guess just at a high level to explain what is network geothermal. So there's really 3 key components to our system. First is the primary thermal source, which really is they're called geothermal heat exchangers. I just call them bore fields. Collectively, across 3 different sites, we have 90 bore fields, and these provide the primary heating and cooling energy for the whole system. The second component to it is a thermal network. So this is a horizontal pipe that is ran across the street. It connects all those bore fields with the participating buildings. So this is homes, businesses. We even have a few municipal facilities that are participating. And then finally, the third key component are the heat pumps. This is the equipment that's inside of each person's home that's participating. Looks similar to a furnace in a lot of cases that hooks up to ductwork, and it's exchanging energy from the bore field and into the home. So in the summer, you're pulling heat out of the home and putting it into the bore field or the bore fields across the project site. And then in winter, you can actually pull heat from underground and then use that to provide heating. And what's really amazing about this technology, and it's crazy because it's not new. There are projects that have been developed across the world. I think really the unique aspect of this project, it's developed by a utility and its utility scale with a lot of different stakeholders involved. And so I'll just add, one of the things I'm really excited about is that in addition to taking energy from the ground, buildings can share energy with each other. And so that maximizes the efficiency of an already very efficient heating and cooling technology.
And where does it stand right now, that project?
So we're actually wrapping up, for the pilot project, we're wrapping up construction. We actually have one of our facilities that's being worked on now, and there's a couple other things to button up, but it is online. Buildings are being served by it. And I guess one of the best things where I'm located in our city, I'm in the capital projects and facilities department. And so I always say when people don't know that an upgrade was made, that's usually the best compliment you can get. So definitely, it's been it's been a process to get there, but seeing the systems installed and kind of working without, just as things were is really awesome to see.
That's very cool. So the climate does not really care where your town line is. We have learned, obviously, the waters rise the same, in one community and its neighboring community as well. And so I know regional collaboration is a really important part of this. Wondering if you can speak to some of the specific projects that are being tackled from a regional standpoint, and kind of how to get at some of these challenges by working collectively. Julie, do you want to start?
Sure, I'm happy to. A lot of that is our job as a regional planning agency. Our staff are planners and other specialists who are trying to enhance local government's capacity and help them work together in as many cases as possible so everybody's not reinventing the wheel and doing their own thing. So right now we have a really exciting effort going on to develop the region's first climate action plan under the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, part of the Inflation Reduction Act, and still going. So that plan will be released this summer, and it's really an outline of what we can do collectively at the regional scale to reduce our carbon emissions and climate pollution. Some of the actions every municipality has to do because of how our local government works, and some are actions that municipalities can do together. A few examples of what that can look like. Some of it is convening power and sharing solutions. So we have an electric vehicle working group that meets every 2 months. That's made up of about 42 municipal staff. They come together and share solutions to electric vehicle issues they may be experiencing in their towns and look at how they can come up with collective solutions for procuring school buses, for example, that are electric, or charging stations that are electric. On the resilience side, we do a lot of regional work, and right now we're exploring cool roofs as a solution to high heat days in the summer. And again, how can we do procurement and get grant money and implement those projects and figure out what that looks like together as municipalities, rather than every municipality working independently.
Hold on, Julie, when you say cool roofs, do you mean like painting rooftops white?
Correct. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, a lot of jargon in this field. And yeah, I think wherever we can, we're trying to think in different fields, like the workforce field. How can we do that collectively across municipalities, finance, other solutions? And I think Jillian and Sean are probably our best example of two municipalities that work closely together all the time on projects. I'm sure they'll share some of those examples.
Yeah, let's hear. So tell us, what's an example of a project that you all work together on?
Well, Sean and I work together almost every day on many projects. We work on helping to educate residents about energy efficiency through the Mass Save program. There's a program called the Community First Partnership that we collaborate on. And that actually, our collaboration has stemmed a lot from this effort we did that was funded through the state through a program called the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program. And that program was the Metro West Climate Equity Project. And through that program, we also worked with the town of Ashland, and we were able to reach out to residents who live in our environmental justice neighborhoods. These are residents who live in areas that have a higher density of low-income people, people who are minorities, and we work to do outreach specifically to them to understand the things that they cared about, because what we found was those weren't the people that were at our local public meetings, and we wanted to hear from them for a change. And so we learned what their priorities are. Those include energy efficiency, how to get around, public transit, having accessible clean water bodies to swim in, which is a challenge in our region, as well as emergency preparedness. And by doing that project and really speaking with those residents, we've actually done multiple projects since then. Maybe you can speak to one of those.
Yeah, no, I think in many ways I look back at the start of the Climate Equity Project as, one of the core objectives was to build internal capacity for us to do this work. And I think one of the key things that we learned is that we can't always come into a project or even just at a higher level an idea and think we have the solution. We want to hear from residents about what are ways that we can help them based on what they're seeing where they live, not just at a community level, but even at a neighborhood by neighborhood level. I think an offshoot of that work, and we're so thankful for Framingham State University McAuliffe Center, who we worked with on a heat watch study. And so that involved a bunch of residents from the community putting sensors on their cars, driving routes, getting like really hyper-local temperature and air quality data. And we actually built that into a lot of our kind of outreach and engagement work in climate equity. And so that's led to our current focus in that project, which is still ongoing since 2021, where we're working with seniors and extreme heat and trying to figure out what are ways that we can support them in dealing with that. And just, one of the things that I've learned is, a lot of residents have air conditioning installed. When you're on a fixed income and electricity prices are going up, a lot of times people are making the decision to not turn it on, even when it's extremely hot outside. So what are ways that we can connect them to energy efficiency resources, ways that they can reduce their costs? I think it's an evolving kind of program, and it's amazing to be able to work with both MAPC and the town of Natick to do that.
I would also just want to echo that partnerships is such an important aspect of our work, and that's not only with other municipalities, but also with nonprofit organizations like the McAuliffe Center. Emily Norton from the Charles River Watershed is here today, and Natick was a founding member of the Charles River Climate Compact, and together we're working on doing research to understand the impacts of climate change and flooding, and really taking a watershed approach instead of just thinking about it as one community and what matters to your community, because the solution to problems in your community might actually be upstream in a different community. So how do we all work together to address climate change?
What about work on, we're talking mostly on like the mitigation side, the limiting emissions, but I know there's also a lot of work on the adaptation and resilience side. Are there some projects that you could speak to that are, tangible things that you're doing in your communities to address the fact that the climate is warming, the water is rising, extreme weather has changed?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I mean, just kind of highlighting again that Heat Watch project. Obviously the immediate deliverable that we got was better understanding. And a lot of it wasn't a surprise. We understand that areas where you have less green space, less trees, they're going to be hotter, right? I think we were able to use it as a tool to really get the information out there and start discussions on it. I think in the city, it's led us to different approaches. For instance, prioritizing splash pads across different, parks, looking at other sustainable ways that we can, help people cool down. And then also, I think it's tough too, because a lot of the mitigation actions we work on are also about resilience. And so even when you're talking about the Community First partnership that, Jillian mentioned, we see it as an opportunity. If people can get their homes insulated, they're much better suited to deal with these extreme temperatures, whether it's extreme heat, or even in the case of, maybe there's a power outage during more severe winters that we'll have. They're going to be able to survive in their home for longer, even if their system's not functioning. So I think we try to view different projects in that same way. There's going to be benefits on both sides. So.
Well, I mentioned the South Natick Dam, which has been a hot topic in our community for since 2019 is when we started really trying to figure out what we were going to do with that piece of infrastructure. And living in Massachusetts, we have some of the oldest infrastructure in the country, right? Whether it's our buildings or our dams. And I think understanding what we wanted for that part of the river and for operation and maintenance perspective for the town was really key to thinking about what's next. And climate comes into that, because by owning a dam, we were putting ourselves at risk in terms of what financial implications could be if there was a failure. And, as we see the climate changing, there's higher precipitation events, and really just who would really want to own that dam given the future of the climate. So what we're doing in Natick is really working with our engineering department and with others to consider climate in the infrastructure decisions that we make, whether it's building new roads and how we design them for stormwater, come to the dam and things like that. There's a lot of decisions we're making every day as a municipality that will impact us and how resilient we can be to climate change in the future.
So all this work, so important, probably pretty expensive. How do you think about funding these projects? How do you fund them? And how has that model perhaps changed? Because obviously when I spoke with you, Jillian, for that story, a lot of it was the sustainability directors were so important because they were helping write grants to get funding from the federal government that was being funneled through the states often or directly to the federal government. That has been turned on its head. So how do you think about continuing this work at a time when the funding has really, the tap is turned off from the federal government at least?
I could jump in and just say at the state level, we still have a really robust system of supporting mitigation and resilience work in Massachusetts. We're extremely lucky. Just to name a few, we have the Mass Save program, which is a nation-leading energy efficiency program that funds retrofits to buildings across the state to make them more energy efficient, and now also focuses on decarbonization. And that's funded by ratepayers, so that's not impacted by federal shifts. We also, on the resilience side, have a municipal vulnerability preparedness program that Jillian mentioned earlier that provides critical planning and implementation grants to municipalities across the Commonwealth to implement resilience projects. And then at the state level, I think they're thinking a lot about finance. So there's an Energy Transformation Advisory Board that the governor recently convened. It has a specific work stream looking at how do we finance the transition, specifically for our electric grid, which requires a lot of upgrades to be ready for electrification and to meet our climate goals. So they're exploring a whole bunch of innovative financing mechanisms that are entirely independent of the federal government.
Has any of your work in Framingham or Natick been affected by the pauses to funding from IRA?
I think on our end, there's a couple things that we're waiting to hear back on. So they're kind of in an area where we're not really sure. I mean, I think there's so much work to do as it is. And as Julie mentioned, there's so much state support that we're really thankful for in projects that are, underway now, whether it's kind of planning for new HVAC upgrades using heat pumps or, other community engagement initiatives. A lot of that we've gotten support at the state level. So certainly doesn't mean that, progress has stopped for a lot of the things that we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the grant that we talked about is currently on pause, and we're trying to figure out what's next for that. I think one of the resources that we're looking at are state programs and the Mass Save program. And, you know, you asked about, you said something about how it can be really expensive, and it is expensive to prepare for climate change. But if you think about what happens if you don't, then that's way more expensive. And in our communities, at least in Natick, we've seen tons of value from the investments that we've made. We pay way less for the electricity we get from the solar panels that are on nearly every school in Natick than we do for the electricity we get from the grid. So in Natick, we've tried to be an early adopter, not the first, but not the last when it comes to sustainability measures and opportunities. And we found that to really be a winning strategy that's paid off.
So Massachusetts is, you know, a largely blue place, but not entirely. And also, whether you vote Republican or Democrat, you know, you might have concerns about certain policies that are specific to climate change and feel like, okay, how does that compare to other needs? So how do you think about selling the work that you're doing to the people in your communities? Jillian, you mentioned before we got on stage that it's not as simple as just calling something the Green New Deal and planting a flag. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. One of the things I really love about working in local government, even like our local elections, is they really aren't partisan. They're about the issues that matter in your community. And as the sustainability director, my goal is to really connect with our residents and help them understand the value of the work that we're doing and how we can work together on it. So I have never mentioned the Green New Deal, and I will never mention that in a public meeting in Natick, because I know that that's not always popular with everyone. And I want people to want to continue investing in this work. So I talk about how sustainability has saved us money. I talk about energy efficiency, about jobs, about issues that we have in our buildings that we need to address. Like, for example, the project that we received funding from the Department of Energy for was in part to address extreme heat in our classrooms. So do you want to have your kindergartner go to school, and on the first day of school, when it's so hot out and there's no air conditioning, for them to go home sick because it's too hot? That's a horrible way to start your school career. So we're working on making things better for our citizens and residents of Natick, and that's, to me, what sustainability is all about in the short and long term.
Julie, what about from a regional perspective? I mean, is there any kind of specific packaging of climate and clean energy that you think about to make sure that it's sort of palatable? And
I mean, I think it depends on the audience. I think the vast majority of residents in Massachusetts care about climate change and are concerned about climate change, and it's a myth to say otherwise. That some people may like to promote, but people understand that the climate is changing. They feel it in high heat days and extreme storms, precipitation events, floods. We know it's happening, and we know that we need to shift. So we often focus there. And then I think it's also just getting a sense of the community. So in any projects that we do, we spend a lot of effort on community outreach and ensuring that we're hearing from a whole wide array of residents. There's huge swaths of the population in Massachusetts that typically aren't at the table in planning projects. They may not be the loudest fringe voices that your question may be alluding to. And we want to bring their voices and concerns into the conversation as well and ensure that their needs are centered too in the work that we do. And try not to pit these things as zero-sum games, like housing versus climate. No, we need to do all of these things. We need affordable housing. We need net zero housing. We need abundance, I think, is what I've been hearing as a narrative lately. And that's where we try to focus.
Sean, one of the questions from the audience came through that is specific to you, a question about the Framingham pilot. Are there plans to expand it to the rest of the state? And I'm curious, like, are you getting phone calls from other people in your position or other governments saying, well, how's it going? Like, do you think this could work here?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, we are hoping to expand. We actually started some initial exploration of that in partnership with Eversource, and it's led by this organization, nonprofit Heat. So yeah, we're excited. Even as we're finishing the pilot, we're kind of looking ahead to saying, what does it look like as these networks grow? Not just from like a logistical perspective, but from a community engagement perspective. How do we get more people on board in neighboring neighborhoods? I think even broader, I mean, that's something even Jillian and I have had discussions about. You know, ultimately it is a system that's owned by the utility. But I think one of the things I see in this space now is that communities, whether it's geothermal or microgrids or this kind of like networking technology, communities are going to play a larger role in that over time. And so, yeah, definitely been getting calls from across the board. But I'll say, too, there's been even other programs either funded by nonprofit organizations or state entities to explore network geothermal in other communities. So, for instance, HEAT funded, I forget the name, I think it was Kickstart Massachusetts, gave 11 communities funding to do their own kind of studies in their neighborhoods to see where it could work.
Yeah, very exciting. So, all right, looking into the future, into the crystal ball, I mean, what kinds of projects do you think you'll be tackling 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, as we're looking at getting to that net zero target or mandate in Massachusetts? What are the kinds of projects you think you'll be tackling, like that you kind of, I don't know, you could hold out in the distance to work up toward?
Well, Sean and I were talking about this just the other day. We're both in the Metro West, and so we're not coastal communities. And so I think that coastal communities right now are feeling and maybe more worried about climate change than maybe folks near Route 9, right? So I think that will become a greater focus for us, how we are really dealing with the effects of climate change in 10 to 20 years. And if you think about 10 years from now, and that will be 2035, and that's when we're supposed to be purchasing 100% electric vehicles in Massachusetts. So will that be happening? And what will the world look like if that's the state of things and that's just the status quo? It's really exciting to think about that. The skeptic in me wonders if it's going to happen, but I'm hopeful that we'll get there and that we'll all be able to work on it together.
Yeah, and maybe I just add in the field of climate, the field of local climate planning is really 15, maybe 20 years old. The first climate action plan in our region was in Boston in 2007, to my knowledge. So the field has shifted rapidly since that time. I think Senator Markey was giving some numbers on solar and EV deployment earlier. So just looking at those changes, it's very hard to know what 10 to 20 years looks like, but I kind of hope I don't have a job, right? Like that we've solved this. I don't know if we will. And I don't think we know what all the solutions are because so many things are shifting in good ways despite some of the federal policy shifts.
Yeah, I just echo those comments. I completely agree. I think just kind of going further into my last previous statements, I think really communities are going to play a greater role as the years move ahead in determining like the future in terms of like energy infrastructure primarily. Like I think that'll be a really huge thing. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for making the time to come be with us today. That's all the time that we have for this conversation, but really appreciate it. And I think it's, in a time when there's a lot of dark and challenging conversations around climate change, it's great to hear about what's happening on the local level. So thank you all. And we will be passing this off to the next panel of the day, which will be with real estate reporter Catherine Carlock, talking about how to make your home more sustainable. So thanks very much.
Do we need 4 seats?